Hey guys, wanted to get on here and finally let you guys know about my trip and everything I learned there, and just to catch you up on what's been going on and just have a little chit chat. I made a little outline to try to keep myself on track so I don't go off in a tangent, but that's probably not going to work very well, so we'll just see. And I am a little bit congested still from the flight, and when I got back it was 70 degrees, but then the next day it was a snowstorm, so I'm a little bit messed up with that, so I apologize if I have that scratchy voice. So anyway, so what this trip was all about. So for the past, let's see, start from the beginning. Okay, so as you all know, I studied introspective hypnosis. I also QHHT and BQH, and I'm doing hypnotherapy training to become certified at HMI. So all of those things, and so a few other things that I've learned along the way. In my sessions, I was coming across earthbound spirits, which earthbound spirits is not a very difficult process. It's a very beautiful thing. Many times they're not always there to harm the other person. That is where somebody dies and their spirit stays here for various reasons. It could be because they were afraid to go to the light. Maybe they did some things in their life that they felt they were going to get punished for, and so they stayed earthbound. And of course they found somebody with a resonance and kind of like a magnet kind of stuck to them. And then you have those that are just maybe afraid, and they are confused, especially if it was a sudden death. Then there's family members, ancestors, people from past lives. It could get really complicated, so I won't go into great detail. But if you have any questions about that sort of thing, you can get with me, and I can share some different resources with you to help you learn more about that. But anyway, so I and others would encounter these spirits, and they're not that hard to speak with and get forgiveness and everything and release the light. But I and many of my colleagues, we would find things sometimes, and sometimes not find them because they like to hide. These more negatively polarized entities that were there for nefarious purposes, to throw this person off, many times because they have great work to do in this world and they wanted to prevent them. And a lot of times they're sent from a higher power to disrupt. And I know this, for some of you guys, you're right along with me like, yeah. You can talk about it. And some of you guys are like, whoa, what is she talking about? This is a little strange. So just, bear with me here. I'll get to the more scientific part of it in a moment. But anyway, so particularly like with methods like QHHT, that it's not taught at all to do the earthbounds or negative entities or alien implants or anything like that. That's just a no-no, that you don't even touch that. So that's why a lot of us went for BQH, was Beyond Quantum Healing, where you can do online sessions and you can bring in any of your other trainings, energy work, the remote dispossession, some kind of any of those things, helping earthbounds. And so that's why you see, a lot of the QHHT people will have BQH, or maybe they just skipped QHHT and went straight to BQH because that's more of their leaning, and they're both beautiful, and I'm just trying to explain kind of the differences. And introspective hypnosis, that is kind of a journey into pain, the pain of this life, which can encompass some past life things, but also it does heavily emphasize the earth bounds, but it's very adamant that everything is positive and there's not negative. That's what we were taught, that sometimes the earthbounds would scream at you and call you names, and I've been called some horrific things, but I understand with compassion that as a suffering being, as one of my teachers calls it, and I love to see it that way, as a suffering being. So that's the way we're treated. Everybody is a person. But some of us were coming across, and you only come across things as a practitioner that you are meant to and willing to deal with, okay? So you practitioners that might be listening, don't think, oh my gosh, I'm gonna come across some of these horrible things. You may never have to deal with that. That may not be your path. So just want to put that out there first. But for those of us who are apparently here to work in a different capacity, we were coming across things like, I came across something once that it said it was like a serpent, and it was wrapped around her body and her spine. And as I spoke with it, trying to reason and get it to understand, where it was and what was going on, it would just get nasty. I'm growing and being really harsh. And so even though through a long process, I got to where it agreed that yes, it would be good to go, and the angels take it where it needed, was the most appropriate place and all of that, I still had this niggling feeling in the back of my mind, like, I think that thing might have been lying to me, and I just wasn't equipped to handle and know what to do about these things. Are there things that are more nefarious, like in a Christian religion might be considered demonic? On a different perspective, you could see these as interdimensional species. Okay, so it's kind of naive these days to think there's only one dimension, only one plane of existence, and that we're the only planet, and all these things. So just expand your mind for a moment and think if there were other creatures that were living in a different plane of existence, dimension. I don't know how to explain it in really simple terms, but just bring your mind to some of these sci-fi movies, that some of them are very interesting in the way they portray these things, and where do you think they get the ideas? But anyway, and so are there things that prey on like human energy, that don't really respect our deities or our framework of interpretation, and that we're pretty much like cattle, like we treat our animals, and the same for ETs and things that study us. We tag animals for study, and we check in on them and things. Well, it appears that's also could be done with us. It hasn't been done with us, and I'm not trying to create any sort of fear or anything, because if you guys knew what powerful beings you are, with part of you stuffed down into this little package, you would understand that you have to fear any of these things. So I just want to put that out there too. So anyway, so a lot of us were on a kind of a mission, that we were drawn and compelled to find other ways. And so when we would hear of a method that is teaching, we can deal with this sort of thing, we were on it. Okay. And last year there was one method that was saying that they could, that's the big thing of it. And so some of us paid a lot of money, let's just put it that way, to travel and to take this class. And it turns out it was all, that part of it anyway, was not true. But that's a whole nother story, and the adventure and the friendships and bonds that were made there by coming together. We were meant to come together, but that did not fulfill. And we got, some good information and some good training on hypnosis methods, but it did not fill that need that when we go into a hypnosis session, we want to help our client in every way possible. If that client happens to be struggling with something that is infringing upon their sovereignty. Sovereignty means that you are the only being in this body, controlling this body in this life. If they have something infringing upon that, maybe they're hearing voices, maybe it's more subtle than that. They just have a lot of anger or addictions or really negative thoughts that they don't understand why that's happening. It could be something like that. And so those of us encountering this occasionally, we wanted to have that tool in our toolbox to take care of this, take care of our client, to do everything in our power to make sure that we were doing our very, very best. And so some of us, we've taken other methods such as A.U.R.A. Some of you may have heard of that, Angelic, Universal Regression, Alchemy. Sorry, I went blank for a minute. That uses, that was developed by our beautiful Aurora, and she came up with a method where it uses alchemy symbols and energy work to help if there are these negative things. It's because sometimes these negative things will totally shut down a session, and the person will not be able to see anything, go anywhere, sense anything. It just totally takes over. And so with that method, there's a lot of energy work in the beginning, symbols placed to keep those from interfering and to help them be discovered easier. But with the hypnosis method, that's very, very effective, yes. But, however, in the hypnosis method, you have the practitioner and you have the client, and the client is the one that has to connect and sense the entities. Okay, so they have to just be able to discover that, and you bring in other energies and archangels and things, but that client has to be able to allow that energy in. They have to be able to detect, and these things are very sneaky and very clever, and some of them may leave and come back later afterwards, so that even for some clients were not completely taking care of the issue in some cases. And there's always the thing, once you're cleared, once the client is cleared, if they're not taking care of their energetic body and whatever was their vulnerability to have this, to be able to come in and be such an influence on them, if that part is not healed, if that part is not maintained, then it doesn't matter if you get rid of hundreds of these things. They're going to come back in full force and probably even worse than before. And so that education is key. And having a simpler way to get at it that bypasses the conscious mind, because when you put someone in hypnosis, the conscious mind is there. Some people are able to completely step out of that, like a somnambulist or even close to a somnambulist, where a somnambulist usually doesn't even remember because they're so deep and their conscious mind is not involved. But then there are those like me. Whenever I go into hypnosis, my conscious mind is there the whole time. I have taught it over time to step back and observe, but it does try to interfere at times, and that is true for many, many people. And so we were kind of looking for a way to give people instant relief in severe cases where maybe hypnosis could not be used. It would be too cumbersome or to be used, or the conscious mind just needed to be out of the way. The person would not even have to be aware that this was happening, as the permission is gotten from the higher self. And so we came across Dr. Terence Palmer's work with Remote Spirit Release. And he began teaching just this about a year ago, I believe, because of the necessity. He was working with Andrew Porter, and Andy has a full-time job, so he can't do this full-time all the time. And so when Dr. Palmer would get cases coming in, sometimes it would take a little while, a few days, and when someone is suffering, you don't want to wait a few days. And so they begin to build teams and to teach. And so I and about 3 other of my friends, we all kind of, it's kind of interesting how we all came together with this at the same time to find and add this to our toolbox. And so before I go any further with that, let me just share with you a couple of books if you want to learn more about what I'm talking about. I didn't make this up, I promise. So Spirit Release Therapy by William J. Baldwin is an excellent book to read if you would like to learn more how to release earthbounds and even more major things, how you speak with them, how you understand what their motivations are, and and all that good stuff. Remote Depossession by Irene Hickman. I don't have that book. I have it on PDF, but if you want to look that up, it's called Remote Depossession, Irene Hickman. And there's another book, The Unquiet Dead, A Psychologist Treats Spirit Possession by Dr. Edith Fiore. I believe she has 1 or 2 possibly other books that you can look up. So that's just a few. And then, of course, Dr. Palmer's book, The Science of Spirit Possession, Dr. Terence Palmer. You can get this on Amazon, or you can go to his publisher and get it in the UK. And if you're interested in that, just drop me an email, and I'll send you a link to where that is. So anyway, so that brings us to this class that we went to. So Dr. Palmer was looking to have another class, and it so happens that one of our, we were sitting in on practice sessions. So let's say when he has a class, he has trainees. And the method, okay, so the method consists of the facilitator, which would be like a hypnosis practitioner does. It's good for this facilitator to have some sort of a background in psychology or hypnosis or counseling, something where they understand how important it is to really protect the psyche of the client, and that has that compassionate spirit where they're drawn to this sort of thing. And so the facilitator is the one that's asking the questions, that's going through the protocol. And there's a certain protocol where things are checked. It's called pretty much referred to it as a spiritual health check. And so just like you would go to the doctor to get your body checked out, this is checking out your etheric, your energetic body, and just seeing if you've got any influences, any spirit bugs, any infringements at all. And it goes all the way down to it's got, encompasses chakras, grounding, all the way down to thought forms and disassociated subpersonalities. If someone is really suffering from one of they've had a trauma in their life that would make them vulnerable to something infringing upon them, a lot of times a part of their personality has broken off, and so that can be healed in these sessions as well. So you have the facilitator, and then you have the second person, which is the medium, and then you have the third, which is the medium's guide or guides. Some of them have multiple that they work with, even within one session. And so the facilitator will ask for the medium to connect with the guide, and when the guide is in, it's preferable that the guide speak through the medium. And the reason for that is because there's less chance of the medium's conscious mind, filtering or interfering in any way. They just step aside and the guide speaks. It doesn't have to be that way in all cases. Some people are more comfortable listening and relaying information, or seeing things and relaying information. So it can be done that way as well. And so this training was basically mostly to train the facilitators and to help them understand what their role is, and the very important role of keeping the medium on track, making it short, efficient, protecting them from sometimes the medium, especially if they're empathic like me. You can, if you're seeing these things, it can really, sometimes you get a little too close to the fire, and so your facilitator would tell you to step back, step back, step back, and let the guide do the work. And that's really handy, because you could if you're a medium and you're connected with your guide and you have this person's energy field in front of you, you're tuned in, there's a wealth of information there, right? You could go into detail about many, many, many things, past, present, past lives, different things. So it's important the facilitator keeps them on the track, because you want these things, you would prefer them to be less than 10 minutes, but when you're first starting, 20, 30 minutes usually is the norm. And so you hit all of the things on the protocol and find out the solution, get it taken care of. The guides have their teams, so the guide isn't doing all of the work. They do what work they're qualified to do. If they find something really heavy, then they call in other teams, which could be Angelics, it could be ET healing teams, it could be a number of different things. I've seen so many really spectacular things. So anyway, for several months now, we have been setting in on these practice sessions from these trainees who have taken the training. So the facilitator working with the medium to connect in with the client and see what's going on with them and clear things out. And so we knew, kind of what was going on and all of this. And so when we got to training, we got the opportunity to do this ourselves. And that was pretty incredible. That was really interesting. And Dr. Palmer, he doesn't train the mediums. The mediums who are going to work should already have a working relationship with their guides. But a few came that were mediums that had been mediums for a while doing work for people and things. And then there were some that were mediumistic, but maybe hadn't really made that connection. And so they got the opportunity to connect deeper. And let me tell you, when you get the energy all together, all focused on the same goal, to help humanity, to raise humanity higher, and to free the wounded spirit, as Dr. Palmer says, it's just so incredible the things that can happen. I saw one medium, she felt like she was stagnant, and she was asking, what can I do? I feel like my gifts are waning, something's going on, and I really want this back. And so we actually did a group tapping on that. We had I can't remember exactly what we did, but it was something about the ability to connect and trust. And that was really powerful, doing that group tapping all in the same room. I've only done group tapping online, and that's super powerful, but being on the same room and all the energy like swirling around in this huge vortex, it was just amazing. And let me tell you, when she got up there to do her work, she was so nervous, but the information flowed. She connected with her guides beautifully. She did a couple of more sessions after that. She did the very last session of the of the training, and I'll expand on that in a little bit. It was just wonderful. It was so wonderful. And there was another girl that we known from the training, and she did know her guides, and she was connected with her guides, but not in the capacity that she was at this class. It was amazing. Her guides came in strongly. She was able to allow them to speak through her. They were so high level. They they understood. They'd been watching all this time with us. We're watching these practice sessions. Our guides are also watching. They're learning what's expected in the protocol, and what are appropriate things to do for different things. And I mean, boom, boom, boom. She was able to just go through cases accurately and quickly. It was just, or not she, her guide. She was able to allow the guide to come through to do that. It was just so beautiful to see. And even my friends, they were able to connect in a more deeper and incredible way with their guides that they had, met previously. And my experience, I was still struggling to meet a guide. I had been told certain, I had certain guides, but I have such a active brain. I mean, I'm very creative, but I have a very, very active, I gotta know why, and I've got to be, always questioning. And so that gets in the way sometimes when you need to just relax and allow. So it's a blessing and a curse in ways, And so I for the past few weeks, okay, in mediumship class, because me and some of the girls were taking it every week. We would take a class online, and it would be like a psychic circle, mediumship circle, to help us develop our senses and to be more trusting. And that we would just let whatever flow come out with no judgment, and it was a safe space. So it's beautiful. But anyway, I kept getting these pictures of this Native American man. And at first, and even in tapping, I would get that sometimes. And I thought it was for another one of my friends, because I would get it a lot when I would tap for her. I would get this image. And sometimes he would have a headdress, and sometimes he would have a headdress with a hawk's beak on it. And then sometimes he would have a fur, and he'd be around a fire. And it took me a while to put two and two together. As a matter of fact, I didn't put two and two together until I got back. That in January, I had a CTT session with George Deuceman, where a Native American man, there was no name put to it at the time, came through and it gave me a beautiful message about being true to yourself, and how relationships between people and tribes and things are manipulated by higher things like government and things, and that we should look to our hearts whenever we're connecting with people and not be controlled and swayed. And so I was expecting in class to connect with a female guide, because I've been told that there's this female guide waiting to work with me. I'm never really connected really well. But that's what I was expecting, and I was just up for anything, whatever. And I was doing a practice before class, and I saw the headdress, and then I saw the wolf, which I think that's the kind of fur that he's wearing, is a wolf fur. So I was like, okay, maybe that's him again. So, and then she asked me what his name is, and I got Red Hawk. And of course, my conscious mind is like, okay. Of course, that sounds like a Native American name. What else would it be, So I didn't really trust it. But I went with it. I was just allowing. And so same thing in class. One of the practicing mediums that's very, very gifted, that came from the UK to help with the class, she was helping me connect, because I wasn't for sure. And she described him as a male with a prominent jaw, and so I knew immediately that's who it was. It was Red Hawk. So I was like, okay, well, we'll do. And I got some good information. It was a little clunky because my conscious mind was stepping in. I wasn't allowing the channel to come through. I was relaying information. But the more it went along, the more fluid it became. And so I'm really excited to work with Red Hawk more. And there's other guides too, but I'm concentrating on the one for now. And so when I got home, I just out of curiosity, because of course my brain likes to know things, I was like, Red Hawk, I wonder if there's anything I can find out about when he lived, because of course these guides, they're a higher consciousness, and they're not necessarily the form that they're presenting, the life that they lived in a human. Some of them didn't have human lives, but a lot of them do. You know, that's not their highest expression, but that's what they give you for you to be able to relate. So I was like, well, let's just see. And I did. I found some information on a red hawk and some pictures. And when I looked at the eyes of the pictures, they were very, very familiar and loving. And so this is my guide I'm working with right now, Red Hawk. And so anyway, that just helps me. I think he knew to show me that incarnation, because my mind is going to be more trusting if I can anchor it in something. And so what I'm doing now is I'll set in meditation, and then I will do all the protocols to, you know, only call in the highest light, and then I'll ask if he has a message, and then I'll just allow the message to come. And I've already done one of those. It was a pretty beautiful message. If I do say so myself, it was a little surprising that I was able to do that. But I'm going to continue to do that to strengthen our communication and our bond, so that I can do the medium part in this work and be able to help in that way. So I just need a little bit more practice on my end. The guides are completely ready. I just have to get myself more prepared, and so I'm working on that. And so let's see how off track I've gotten here. All right, so I explained the difference between hypnosis and the remote spirit release. Showed you guys some books to learn more. Told you a little bit about the mediumship. Well, that's everything on my list. So let's see if anything else comes to me. And so, oh yes. So we're doing practice sessions. So now we're trainees. We've been through the course. So now it's the practice, because it's very important to make sure you have that working relationship. And so for that, you have to practice. And so we submit cases for each other and our teams to work on. And so this is where you guys come in. If you can submit a case. Now, what you have to understand, any cases that you submit to be worked on by a trainee, that things could be missed in the check, because they are trainees, the guide and the medium. They're still learning, and it could take a few days to a few weeks to get to your request. So just so that you have that in mind. So if it's an urgent thing, it's better to go to Dr. Palmer's website or Charlotte's website or Andy's website and order one to be done immediately. Excuse me. And so so for the guidelines for this, okay, so if one of you guys has someone in mind that you feel like could be influenced in some way by an energy that doesn't belong to them, not necessarily an earthbound energy, because those are pretty simple to take care of. We're talking more along the lines of very negatively polarized, like someone that's harming themselves, someone that is maybe hearing voices, super angry, just having a really hard time struggling. So that's more what this case would be for. It could be for lighter things, like we do checks for each other to make sure we're clear, because when you open up to spirit, say you're a person that is doing a lot of meditating and a lot of working with crystals, a lot of working with just different things that opens you up, and you don't close down properly, or you don't say you get out there at your job or something and you get angry and frustrated, the resonant energies, so whenever you have those highly negative energies, it's kind of like a little kind of like say a shark in the water, how they smell blood. They're like, ooh, yum yum. So they're gonna you're gonna attract attention, and if you don't have the framework to protect you, they will circle you and find somewhere to get in. So you could have some things like that and still be functional and still be, you just may feel off and tired and just something's not right, kind of thing. And so you could submit something like that as well. But if you are going to submit something, we do ask that any of these done for free by a trainee in practice, that you are willing to give us feedback, because it's really important for us to know, did it work? Do you have the relief? Did any of it make sense? That sort of thing. And so it's really going to be a give-take thing. And we can't take a whole lot of them. We only meet a couple of times a week, and everyone is going to be bringing things from their personal, their family, and people that they've come into contact with. And so just be aware that it might not be a very quick thing to get it taken care of. But if it's something that you really would like to have checked out, certainly shoot me an email. What we need is your name, or whoever we're working on. Well, I guess we need your name too, but the person that we're working on, we need a name, the location, which could just be the state and possibly the city, and the age. And that's all we need to give to the guide to connect, and get that checked out. Okay, so the cool story I was going to tell you about, I almost forgot. So the last day of training, there was one more case to be dealt with, and so they were asked for a medium and a facilitator to go up, and things were going along just like a normal everyday case, and some things were discovered that were super major, like horrible, negative, all of those words. And so the guide asked for all of us in the room to project our energy to this. There was an entity that was influencing this client, and it was like sent straight from like negative central, whatever you want to call that. It was like very, very huge, and so we were all focused on this case, and we were all lending our help and our energy, our guides. This was a super tough case. There was so many things found, holes in the aura everywhere, disassociated subpersonalities of the worst kind, lots and lots of suffering in this person's past that created all of these things. And so once it was done, once it was taken care of and completed, then it was revealed that this case was submitted, that the person had been a mass murderer. They had murdered several people all in one go. And that made a lot of sense. And it was kind of mind-blowing. It was like, this is one of the main things that this method would be so helpful to address. How many of these senseless murders could be prevented? This person had heard voices. This person had a lot of signs, and they were just, treated with medication. If someone, somehow by some miracle, had realized that this could be on more of an energetic, spiritual level, and he could have been freed from these horrific, controlling things, how many people could be saved in that way? How many people could be redeemed? That was a total soul rescue right there. Now this person, his deed was already done. He's locked him in jail. But that just goes to show, because the medium has no idea who they're working on. Okay, they have a name, they have an age, and they have a location. And these murders happened several years ago, so it's not a name that would bring up in the psyche. And so it is very hopeful. We're so hopeful that this method and methods like this, because there are many different ways to do this kind of thing. This is more of a laid out, regimented way to study and to have efficiency. If some of these people that are tormented and being told to do these horrific acts, if they could be freed from this influence, if they could be healed of their vulnerabilities, have their dissociated subpersonalities reintegrated in to their root personality, it's just a beautiful thing that can be done. And I just wanted to make sure I told you guys that story and didn't leave that out, because that was just like the kicker. That was like we were just all in so much awe and appreciation for the power that we all have if we just tap in, if we just listen to guidance, always reaching for the higher. And so I just want to make sure I shared that with you guys. Anything else? So anyway, I want, hopefully I explained that sufficiently for you guys to have some sort of understanding of what that's all about. So this is a really cool tool in our toolbox that and ways that us hypnosis practitioners and hypnotherapists plan to work. This is, sometimes we get really tough cases that come in for a hypnosis session. We can have them cleared beforehand, so there's no interference going in. After a hypnosis session, we can do follow-up and do a quick maintenance type thing. There's a lot of different ways that this can be used, and since it's remote, we don't have to be in the same room. The person does not actually have to know consciously that it's being done, because the spirit guide will check with the higher self. And there are instances where the higher self says, no, that's not appropriate, and we honor that, and okay, it's not appropriate at the time for them to have a spiritual health check. And excuse me, that's what we do. And so that you would want to use that in cases of say someone is in the hospital, a child or something where they're incapacitated, where they can't give their permission, or maybe they're a person that would never even believe this sort of thing. So you could request on their behalf on that. But just know that if the higher self says, no, it's not appropriate to be worked on, then that we're going to honor that. But that doesn't happen very often, because most of the time it is in their best interest to be sovereign. We're all meant to be sovereign. We're all meant to be the only occupier of our body. And so, but like Dr. Palmer and the others have said in their books, you take care of your physical body, and sometimes it breaks down. Sometimes you get a cold. Sometimes you get illness because of some kind of vulnerability. That's the same in spiritual that can happen. And I've said this a million times, and I thoroughly believe that we are here to help each other, and we fractalize to come here to come back together. So don't feel like you're burdening anybody to ask for help, because that is what we're here to do. I help you, you help me. It's a beautiful circle. So anyway, I'm going to close this now. If you have any questions, just give me a holler at soulstarenergetics@gmail.com. And if you would like to have a check done, or you know somebody that really needs a check done, I will put email that to me. But if it's urgent thing, I will put the information in the information area of the video. And I believe that's all I needed to talk about today. So you guys take care. Have a great rest of your week. Talk to you later. Bye.